Hole number 1 with Frank Nobilo.
The U.S. Open is always Kentucky bluegrass mixed with rye. It's juicy. Even before you get there, you realize that if you miss a fairway, you're going to pay the price. And of course, now you take that walk to the back of the tee. You look at the scorecard, it's going to read 482 yards of par 4. And of course, when you turn around, the course is going to look different to the last time you played a U.S. Open here. You're going to look around and realize there's 7,500 trees have been removed, and now you can see the whole property. But now you start to refocus on the opening tee shot. You realize there's 3 bunkers down the right side of the fairway, and there's 5 bunkers down the left. And a fairway a little less than 25 yards in width. Historically, this fairway is hard to hit. Less than 50% of the players keep the ball on the fairway with their opening tee shot. But it's actually a tremendous way to start a U.S. Open, a taxing tee shot straight out of the gate. It doesn't get any easier from there. I'm going to take you down to the top of the hill and see what skates in front of you. So with a good tee shot, you're going to find the sprinkler down here. This is the 178 sprinkler. So that's 312 yards off the tee. For some people, it's just a 3-wood because this tee shot at the opening hole is a little bit downhill. If that's downhill, this is severely downhill, the second shot. This is actually only 159 yards to the front. But you've got to adjust for elevation, you've got to adjust for wind, and remember, this is Oakmont. These are some of the fastest greens in the business. So it's not exactly a straightforward second shot out of the gate. But in the back of your mind, if the wind was right, 1 golf ball, 158 to the front, if you threw this really, really hard, it just might make it to the green.
All right, let's start with this. Clint Hurdle, Pirates manager on line 3, wants to know if Nobilo can come out of the pen tonight in New York against the Mets. Fine-looking throw there from Nobilo. And getting back to the first hole, just incredibly difficult way to start your day, having to face that. And as he talked about, very few guys will probably even hit driver off that first hole. Nonetheless, the golf course, especially early in the week, will get so much of the conversation as players, a lot of them for the first time, get their chance to get out on the property, see this golf course with no trees, with no water, and not really understand until they play it why it is so difficult. For more on the golf course and the reaction from the guys on it, we once again throw it to Todd.
Well, Ryan, talking to some players, they say, maybe with the exception of Augusta National, the set of greens out here at Oakmont in regards to pitch and pace, the toughest that they will face. And without a doubt, this is the most dense rough that they have ever seen. Phil Mickelson, who played a practice round, actually a couple practice rounds here last week, said this is the toughest golf course that he will play all year. And I have yet to meet a player that will disagree with him.
It's pretty scary out here today, I got to be honest. I mean, obviously this wind's up, blowing 25. Greens are pretty dry and pretty fast. Putting to some potential pin positions. They're definitely going through that acclimatization period right now, and it's going to be a really tough week.
Well, I've only played 6 holes or 7 holes, and it's the hardest course I've ever played, ever. I wouldn't go within a year. I don't think there's going to be a harder golf course you ever play anywhere under benign conditions. Obviously, wind and weather can play effect, but on a perfect day, this is as hard as it gets.
Well, I know I'm going to have to science the heck out of this golf course because this is something you don't see every day. But the rough's really up and greens are extremely fast and undulating, and you got to hit the fairway every single hole. If you don't, you're chipping back out. So this is going to require a premium on ball striking and be a great lag putter out here, and I think that'll be the champion.
It's a hell of a test here this week. Severe rough and severe greens, and that's a brutal combo. The course is in great shape. You're just going to have to play really good.
All right, what you may be hearing right now, these are lawnmowers. They are hand mowing the rough here. This may be the only time they're going to mow the rough the entire week. And the players are concerned about the conditions because the weather is going to change throughout the week. We are expecting some rain, maybe from a ½ inch to maybe even 2 inches through the week. So that's going to change this golf course throughout the week, Ryan. So a lot of preparation for these players and the grounds crew as they get Oakmont ready for the U.S. Open.
Yeah, absolutely. No signs of rain today. As we said, about 75 degrees. It's going to get a lot warmer. The humidity is going to rise, and there are certainly some thunderstorms in there. Interesting, from all the guys we heard there, Rosie, Bryson DeChambeau, of course, who was an amateur, won the U.S. Amateur, won the NCAA back in 2015, played so well at the Masters, then turned professional as soon as the Masters was complete, said he wants to, quote, science the heck out of it this week. Interesting cat that hasn't had quite the success that many had forecast for him.
Aaron and I got a kick out of that comment, you have to admit. Ryan, this is a golf course where it takes much more than science, obviously, to survive. If the greens don't get you, the ditches will. If the ditches don't get you, the rough will. If any of that stuff gets to you, then your head will get in your way, and it'll prevent you from playing the type of golf that I don't even think science can step in on.
He's going to be up all night thinking of variables for his hypothesis to try to solve the riddle that is Oakmont. I just don't think it. It's a field-oriented golf course. And just to give you an idea about how tough this golf course is, to Todd Lewis's point and all the guys that we heard talk about, in 2006, the same winning score that was shot here was shot at Wingfoot, +5. Jeff Ogilvy won, just like Angel Cabrera won. And in 2006, 36 people for the 4 days shot 80 or worse. In 2007, 60 people shot 80 or worse on this golf course. It's a beast. And there's no other golf course that even comes close to how difficult this golf course is when set up for a U.S. Open.
I don't doubt anything you say for a minute, but I have to ask you this. When you hear every player after player talk about how it's impossible and it's so difficult, and it almost appears a lot of guys will have set themselves up ahead of time that the course is untamable. If you come onto the golf course with the mindset that this place is impossible and to break 80 is going to be difficult, can you cross that player off your list?
Two ways to look at it. That's a great question. Two ways to look at it from a player's perspective. You either accept it for what it is, which is brutally difficult, and you go at your game plan and you play every shot to the best of your ability, or you fake yourself out and create your own reality, which a lot of players do from time to time, basically lying to themselves. This is great. I know exactly where to go. I know exactly what to do. You can go ahead and do that too. Either one works. I was more of a realist. I said I would come out to the golf course and I would say, this is hard. This is the way I'm going to have to play it. Some guys go, it's not hard, even though way deep in the recesses of their mind that they don't want to talk about, it's brutally hard to them too.
In 07, when you played here, what was the toughest part of the golf course for you? Was it off the tee or the greens?
It was the greens. The greens were just impossible. They were really, really difficult. There's no bail areas on this golf course when you hit your second shots. You're trying to look for an area to hit your ball on the greens that just don't exist. And in some cases, my first hole of the tournament, I remember number 10 in the morning. It's supposed to be soft. 3-wood, 6-iron, 30 feet right of the hole, just where I'm supposed to be. 4-putt double to start my tournament in 2007. So just like that, you're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, 4-putts never the way you want to get started.
Never good.
You look at the list of champions here, what do they have in common? They're all great ball strikers, maybe some of the greatest ball strikers of all time. The one player that kind of broke the mold and almost won here, lost in the playoff in 94, was Lauren Roberts. I spoke to Lauren last week at the Senior Players, and how did he do it? He did it with his putter, which makes sense. He shot 64, and was threatening Johnny Miller's record at one point in time. But he was describing the putts he was making paired with Mickelson, 40-footers, 25-footers. Mickelson just shaking his head, not understanding what was going on. You can beat the system here if you have the type of putting round that Lauren Roberts had, but you can't beat it forever, as was shown in that playoff on Monday.
Yeah, you never know. It's the unknown that obviously is why we all watch and all come to see this great game. A player that not many predicted would have a major championship this year already would be the Masters champion, Danny Willett. Green jacket in the closet. Can Willett go 2 for 2 in majors in 2016? He's getting his work done here on a Monday, live from U.S. Open. Continues. Golf Central is live from the U.S. Open, Oakmont Country Club, just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Take a look at the par 3 16th hole, 231 yards. Second longest par 3 at Oakmont. The hole was originally 226 yards when it was built in 1903. And 07 at the U.S. Open, played as the 10th toughest hole on the golf course. Let's go tee to green, learn more about the 16th once again with Frank.
The last par 3 that players will have to face is a daunting 16th hole. I'm going to take you a little closer to the green. The hole off the back is about 230 yards. And when you see a flag on the right side of the green, it looks like it's the hardest hole location. But I'm going to tell you it's not. One feature that all the players will be very, very aware of is this false front. It finishes at about 12 yards on the green. If you don't carry it all the way up the top there, it's just going to start to funnel off. But the other thing is we start to look at these greens, like every other green at Oakmont, they're far from flat. But you can use that to your advantage. Remember, I said right hole locations are easier? I'm going to show you why. There's a ridge in the middle of the green. As long as that ball gets somewhere in the middle of the green, it's just going to funnel towards the right. And before you know it, you're going to have a putt inside 10 to maybe even 15 feet. Obviously, with a back hole location or even where it is today, that is very, very makeable. Now, the problem comes, though, is when you see that left flag. It might look a little easier off the tee, especially if you had a perfect shot, then that's going to get very, very close. That seems easy, right, or even one in the back. So we might see a few birdies on that left side, but the biggest concern is when you start to miss the green on this left side, you're going to start to realize that all the natural defenses at 16 are actually this left side. There's a huge cavernous bunker down here. And of course, the chances of getting that up and down to one of these hole locations is extremely, extremely difficult. And if the ball hangs in this rough just down here, that's not exactly a snack either, because a shot coming from here across this green, we know is going to funnel all the way down to the other side. So 16 over the years has been one of the best par 3s at Oakmont. One of the toughest, but also the most rewarding. Remember, flag on the right will yield more birdies.
Flag on the right, more birdies, and one of the players that certainly knows when you get a chance for birdie, you must connect, must cash in, is world number 1, Jason Day, who, oh, by the way, has the most birdies of any player in the last 5 years at the U.S. Open. Certainly a number that will favor him this week for the world number 1.
No doubt, working around the greens here, one of the strongest parts of his game, Rosie.
You know, it's, I guess you would say underrated in a sense. I don't know how you can be underrated when you're first in sand saves and also strokes game putting. But for obviously a power player, and you focus on, well, I referenced it earlier, 308-yard 2-iron to finish out the Players' Championship. This doesn't get as much attention as it should, but it could be the deciding factor in him winning his second major championship this week.
I would be shocked if it wasn't the deciding factor around this place, because you're not going to be able to hit every green around here. In 2007, that I saw that the top 5 guys who finished in the top 5, none of them hit 50 greens. So you're going to have to chip and putt. Even Angel Cabrera had to do it. And just take a look at when he hits these chips, how fast these balls. I mean, he's barely touching that thing. And look at this ball. I mean, that's just pure gravity. Now, these greens will be somewhere in upwards of 14 on the snip meter. The members play this golf course, and I'm not kidding when I say this, the members play this golf course between 13 and 13.5 on regular play. Now, that's not something that I would recommend for every golf club in America, that's for sure, because number one, your members would get lost. They'd never find their way back into the clubhouse, but that's a special thing about Oakmont, one of the very special things about Oakmont.
Oakmont, one of the reasons the snip meter was invented. The greens have always been this quick here at Oakmont. If not Jason Day, maybe another fellow Australian, Adam Scott, on your short list this week of players that could cash in and win a major championship. Adam Scott has a Masters to his resume. Would love to follow that up with the U.S. Open this week. 2 career top 10s the last 2 years for Adam Scott. Certainly moving in the right direction. Golf Central is live in the U.S. Open. Oakmont Country Club, Golf Channel live this week for the U.S. Open. 72 degrees in Pittsburgh. Just a beautiful Monday as we take a look at the 11th hole, par 4, 379 yards. It is the 4th shortest par 4 on the card. Originally was 325 when it was built in 1903. Players will have to take advantage of this particular hole. Bobby Jones won the 1925 U.S. Amateur on this hole as he defeated the East Lake clubmate Watch Gun 8-7. Speaking of some great history, Ben Hogan On this date in history, June 13th, 1953, it was Hogan beating Sam Snead by 6 strokes at Oakmont to capture his record-tying 4th U.S. Open. Jordan Spieth will look for back-to-back U.S. Opens at the same place that obviously Hogan did it in 1953 right here at Oakmont. We're out on the golf course now with Spieth, McIlroy, Fowler, and Smiley Kaufman on this 11th hole as we get a look at Rory, who's won a U.S. Open already to his credit. Looks like a lot of range coming in. You've always been one of the guys when it comes to Rory that he loves to see rain in the forecast.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If it's soft, I always like to give Rory a chance. He's won a lot of golf tournaments on soft golf courses, and if this one gets soft, you remember what he did in 2011, Ryan and Rosie, 16 under at Congressional on a rain-soaked golf course, and he just torched the place. And second best score was Jason Day at 8 under. So you look at Rory, and in cumulatively to par since 2011, and obviously 11 was a lot of that, Rosie, he's plus 14 in the last 5 U.S. Opens, and that's second only to Jason Day out of the guys in the top 5 in the world. So obviously one of the guys that you got to watch out for this week, especially if he gets that driver going. But I think, you know, going back to the standard putting, I thought was a good move by him.
This is Jordan now. We get a look at Jordan Spieth, and another great testament as he tries to figure out the speed of the greens. He thinks he just has to touch it from 15, 20 feet away, and it comes up a little bit short. And Ricky Fowler behind Jordan. Rosie also putting his work in as we get a nice look there at world number 2, Jordan Spieth.
It's not like high-powered players didn't practice back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It's just that now with television and live from and social media, you get a chance to get a peek at it, and it's entertaining, and it's fun to watch the interaction, fun to watch them learn the golf course. A couple weeks ago, I was here. Ricky was here. Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas, Smiley Kaufman. They all took, with the exception of Ricky, they all took Oakmont caddies to get a better feel for the golf course. And then even over the weekend, I saw Rory tweet a picture from MacArthur down in Jupiter, Hope Sound, where the guys were together. Obviously, it wasn't Oakmont. It was 90-something degrees. But the point is that this isn't as much the money game situation that we see when Mickelson's out with the guys on Tuesday. This is more of getting to know the golf course and being around people you're comfortable with more than it is anything else.
This is the new breed of the PGA Tour, though, here, Rosie.
Guys getting along?
Well, yeah, you would never see, back when I played, I would have had a heart attack if I would have seen Phil, Tiger, and Ernie, or Phil, Tiger, and VJ step to the first tee together and all play a practice round together. That just wasn't going to happen. The egos were too big. That's too many alpha dogs in one group with too big of alphas. And that's just not the case these days.
You don't think each one of these guys are alpha dogs?
They're alpha dogs, but the way they look at it is just very different than the way that those guys looked at it.
Explain.
To me, you know what? Those guys were just even more. Not that these guys are cutthroat in a different way. I mean, they're just cut from a different cloth. I want to say that they saw maybe the errors in the ways of some of the guys back in the day, and they're using as much as they use those guys as a benchmark for performance. Maybe they use some of the stuff that they did as a cautionary tale at the same time, and maybe they want to get along. And I think it's great to see these guys playing a practice round together. But I'm just saying that in my era, when I played, you would have never seen it. That's why I'm surprised to see it today, because I would have never seen it when I played.
Aaron might be thinking just a little bit before your era, maybe, because I'm thinking about Norman. Norman would take guys out, kids out to play with them and kind of teach them things, and Nicholas would do the same thing too. Raymond Floyd would too, but we're talking about the 70s and 80s versus the 90s and 2000s.
All sports are kind of moving in this direction, though. I mean, in a couple weeks, you're going to see LeBron on a banana boat with D. Wade and Carmelo. I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it does. I don't know that there's anything bad about it. I think it's great for golf. I think that the people see these guys get, or I don't know. You can make the counter argument that is it so great for golf? Isn't that rivalry and that tension? Isn't that also good for the game to have that rivalry where they're not like back here in '62 when it was Jack against Arnie in the playoff? You know, I mean,
that was
no one was rooting for Jack.
Well, it is a Ryder Cup year, and with McIlroy in that group, you'd have to believe that that later this fall that they won't be super chummy together.
He's doing some early scouting.
It is the Ryder Cup. Speaking of the Ryder Cup, this guy has got a great shot at making the European team. It's the youngster Matthew Fitzpatrick out there on the putting green as his game really starting to round into shape as he gets a little open. Jim Furyk, second place in 2007, the last time the U.S. Open was held here at Oakmont Country Club. Jim Furyk is from Western Pennsylvania, huge Steeler fan. Loves a big fan favorite in these parts. 2007 had a great chance, made his U.S. Open debut right here at Oakmont in 1994, where he had a top 30. It's his 22nd U.S. Open start. And Aaron, as we watch Furyk, who's still getting healthy, returning. Remember, he missed almost the whole year moving into the late spring. Here's a guy that with a little luck could probably have at least 2 U.S. Open championships, maybe 3 to his credit.
You forget that he finished second also in 2006. No one realizes that. Back-to-back years that he finished second. And this one I know hurt him a lot. Obviously wanting to win in his hometown, win a U.S. Open in his hometown. And the bogey on 17, I remember hearing about it. I remember going back and watching it and watching him bogey that 17th hole, which is basically drivable. Drove it earlier in the week. That was a hard thing to watch. I'm sure it was a hard thing for him to swallow. But it'll be interesting, Rosie, to see what he can do. I was talking to him on the range at Colonial, and he's still kind of working out the scar tissue in that wrist.
Scar tissue in his wrist, and still, I'm sure, some scar tissue in his head over what happened at 17, just 306 yards. Decided to go for it, got lost in Big Mouth. It turned into one of his darkest days of his career, one of his darkest endings. But as Fluff Cowan, the caddy, said, you can say all you want in hindsight. It just depends upon what the player is feeling and what he feels like doing at that situation and time. Jim felt like he had it. Driving on that green, even though basically all you can see from the tee is the top of the flagstick. Didn't play out. He's heartbroken. That's golf. We move on.
Jim's only major championship was a U.S. Open. Seems to have the perfect game for the tough courses that the U.S. Open usually tests these players with. We're back much more live from Oakmont.
The U.S. Open. Brought to you by Cobra Golf.
When Henry Phones designed Oakmont Country Club in 1903, he had to use the ground around him to work with, and boy, did he ever create a masterpiece. Those, of course, are the world-famous Church Pew bunkers on the 3rd and 4th hole. 100 yards long, 40 yards wide. They feature those 12 grass-covered ridges that can raise as high as 4 feet in fescue. Those are world-famous, and so are these, the best players in the world, including the world #1, Jason Day. His U.S. Opens the last 5 years, he ranks first in birdies, first in rounds in the 60s, and first in scoring average. Hard not to pick Jason Day this week. Last year, Jordan Spieth became the youngest player ever to win the Masters and the U.S. Open in a career. Oh, by the way, he did it in consecutive majors. He is your defending champ after that come-from-behind win last year at Chambers Bay when, of course, Dustin Johnson misses the eagle and the birdie at the 18th, and Jordan Spieth becomes a 2-time major champion. And there is Rory McIlroy, who won the U.S. Open in 2011. McIlroy finished 12th or better in each of his last 6 worldwide starts. So you start to formulate a plan on who you're going to pick this week, and obviously you think about their past history at the golf course, past history in the event, and maybe more important than anything else is just overall form. Let's start there before we get into Oakmont. Who's playing the best golf in the world right now?
Wow. I'm going to say Jason Day. I'm going to say Jason Day is playing the best golf out of those 3. It took me a while to figure that out.
You were there. I did give you 3 names, which is it's a lot to handle.
It's a lot. Hold on.
A, B, or C.
I'll take D. But yeah, I think for right now, there's no doubt that Jason Day is. He's got 3 wins. He's firing on all cylinders, and I think the most important parts of his game, which is his short game, are in full flight right now. And I think you're going to need that. As much as you say you need ball striking around this golf course, he's got that. There's no doubt. doubt. But you're going to miss some greens. You're going to miss some fairways. And you're going to be left to make what we call U.S. Open pars, where you're going to have to use your wedges from 50 to 75 yards, maybe even up to 100 yards, and then obviously pitching around these greens. Right now, Rosie, not a lot of people in the world better than Jason Day at that.
The beautiful thing right now, Aaron, though, is not just Jason Day. We got Rory back in the game now. As he said, his father looked at him over in Europe and said, "You're just miserable playing golf." That's not the case. You can just see it in his body language. Of course, that's what a W will do for you. And the same thing with Jordan. Jordan was down in the dumps, and his behavior was being commented on, to put it mildly. He was not playing the type of golf that he had been. He was getting a little prickly at times, but just a W at Colonial, catch a good lie with a nice drop and get it, hold that shot, and go. We're right back at 2015 again, which is the beauty of this Open. To me, Ryan, that we have the 3 best players in the world where they need to be going into this golf tournament.
6 straight starts with 12th or better, including a win for McIlroy. So he, too, heading in the right direction, no doubt about that. Well, Pittsburgh is considered, if not the best, one of the great sports towns in all of America. So no surprise here on a Monday, the place would be hopping with fans out to see the best in the world. Now, the players made it easy for the fans today as we bring in Todd Lewis again. Todd, you talk about a marquee group. You get Spieth out there with McIlroy and Fowler, and you know the fans are going to show up in droves. And as I look out, the players, those particular players just walk past on the left. They've got they got thousands of people following them here on a Monday. It's pretty incredible stuff.
And for good reason. I mean, you've got 3 of the top 5 players in the world in that group, besides Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, and Ricky Fowler. You also have Smiley Kaufman, who's rounding out that foursome. Jason Day played the back 9 earlier, world number 1 this morning, and now you've got number 2 and 3 out playing in that group, playing together, and Ricky Fowler as well. And I talked to Ricky Fowler, and he says he likes to play with the best in the world because obviously it makes him better, and they like to have a game, and I'm sure there is one going on right now. As a matter of fact, tomorrow there will be a bit of a game involving Ricky Fowler. Ricky said he will partner up with his friend Justin Thomas to take on Rory McIlroy and Luke Donald, and that has a little bit of Ryder Cup overshadowing those 2 teams going at each other. Rory McIlroy and Luke Donald obviously been a part of the European Ryder Cup team. Ricky's been part of the United States team. Justin Thomas hoping to be a part of that United States team this year. So he feels like that playing with the best players in the world is going to make him better. And again, he's number 5 in the official world golf ranking, Ryan, and he's playing with 2 guys who are ahead of him in the official world golf ranking. And Ricky's looking to bounce back too. He hasn't been playing very well. He admits it. He's missed the cut in 3 of his last 5 starts.
I appreciate it, Todd. Those players right now, that marquee group, currently playing the 14th hole on a Monday here at Oakmont. Par 4, 358 yards. It is the 3rd shortest par 4 at Oakmont. Just 12 yards longer, Aaron, than when it was built in 1903. Not a whole lot of changes.
No, not a lot of changes to this one. This one will be drivable at some point, Ryan. This is one of the 3 drivable par 4s that I think the guys are going to have a whack at, depending on where they put the hole location. Got to avoid all those bunkers. Lay it up somewhere in there if you want to wedge it on. Look at how narrow that is right there going into that green. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the guys take a whack at that one.
And back out there live now on the putting surface here at the par 4 14th. We're live with Spieth, McIlroy, Fowler, and Kaufman. And back to your point of just how the last time you played in a U.S. Open, 2007 here at Oakmont, that you would never see 3 of the best players in the world all in the same group together. These guys have embraced that role, even though some of them, obviously, the McIlroy is a different country than the rest. I mean, they will be foes in a Ryder Cup, which is usually a stressful environment where there's a lot of hooting and hollering and finger pointing. But on this particular Monday, you got 4 guys out enjoying a perfect day of weather and a great golf course.
They're just likable gentlemen, and I don't believe that they don't want any tension. I think that they want to compete as hard as they can. Yeah, they want to beat each other. There's no doubt. But at the end of the day, it's kind of old school, which I love. They can go inside and have a beer at the end of the day or whatever their beverage of choice is and laugh about things. So I like seeing this. I like seeing this versus what some of the top guys that I played against went through.
Rosie, with Spieth, who we got to look at, and Rory, there was never any tension, but you almost got the sense from McIlroy that he was tired of hearing how great Jordan Spieth was in 2015, as Spieth was dominating the world. I had a year for the record books, and of course McIlroy was going through that foot injury. And the questions in the McIlroy press conferences are, what do you think about Spieth? Clearly, there's no differences between these two as they're out choosing to play with each other on a Monday.
Well, as people, they like each other. We see that. We know it. As competitors, they can hate each other. That's part of the game of golf. This is not like football and some of the other contact sports, obviously. This is not anywhere near Seve and Azinger, just to pull up an American and a European, maybe the best example of players not getting along. You wouldn't have seen them playing the practice round, obviously.
That's for
together
sure.
And hanging out and exchanging.
I don't think they played on the same nines to get with each other.
But guys, we were talking about this during the break. The one guy benefiting from this, it's interesting how Smiley Kaufman has become an A-list guy, at least as it relates to these practice rounds, and who's probably getting more out of this than anybody else as it relates to growing themselves as athletes and golfers is Smiley. To be around players who have won Players Championships or major championships is just invaluable stuff. And for a kid who, out of LSU, didn't always make his starting five, who won once this late last year in Las Vegas and has played well with a lot of talent, to be around these players and to soak up information off of them is a big career grower for him.
It's kind of like me with you guys, just trying to
just hanging out with the
riding those
that's
coattails.
Couple of superstars.
But we don't like you. You're like kind of like
couple of superstars. We're on the course now with Brandt Snedeker. This might surprise you guys, but 70.7 scoring average in the U.S. Open over the last 5 years. He's actually tied for Jason Day over the last 5 years for the best scoring average of any player in the field. Could Brandt Snedeker be one of those surprise selections this week at Oakmont? Golf Central live from Oakmont Country Club. Back after this.
Live from the U.S. Open is brought to you by Vonage, business grade, people friendly. Titleist, the #1 ball played at the U.S. Open for 68 years and still counting.